Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today in this video we are going to discuss about steps to review customer activity. This video will be in continuation with the transaction monitoring. I have made two videos on transaction monitoring, so you can watch those videos first and then come to this video, because this will be in continuation of this video. In the middle I have made one video on because this was the hiring season is happening, so till December the KYC and AML hirings will happen. So I thought of that frequently asked KYC AML questions would be helpful, so I made that video. So it is actually, this video will be in continuation of the transaction monitoring series. So in this video we'll look into, or we'll discuss about steps to review customer activity. When we say customer activity, it is nothing but customer transaction activity. So there are 5 steps in reviewing the customer transaction activity. So it is nothing but reviewing customer transaction activity is nothing but performing transaction monitoring. And there are 5 steps included, and each step has a very detailed explanation. So if you can pay a little attention, it will be very useful to you. So going forward from today, what are the videos I post that will be very extensive, in-depth knowledge. Those who want to make a settled career in compliance, it will be helpful for them. It is not like the basics, to crack the interview or not. Those who want to make some settled career in compliance, these videos will be very useful for them, because going forward my videos will be very in-depth, and there are few videos which can't get more reach, so I'll just put them in the PDF document or somewhere around the stories, and based on the response I will be able to make a full video. So coming to this video, in this video we are going to discuss about steps to review customer activity. So customer activity is nothing but customer transaction activity. So there are 5 steps. The first one is identify the trigger. So we have to identify the triggering point, what triggered the alert. And the second one is investigate. So you identify the trigger point and you have to investigate it. So I'll give an example. In detail we can discuss again step by step. I'll give an example. So first they say identify the trigger. For example, an individual or a salaried employee, he is receiving salary 50,000 every month. Suddenly one month he have received a salary of 2 lakhs. So which means that is a trigger point. Its behavior got changed. The transaction behavior got changed. So that is a trigger point. So second step is investigate. We have to investigate why the amount got changed. There might be the few reasons. Maybe he might be received salary plus bonus, or he might be received salary plus variable pay. So there might be chances that we have to investigate it manually, what triggered the alert. So the first one is identify the trigger, the next one is investigate it, and third one is document your findings. So what all the findings we have found, we have to document the findings. And next one is corrective measures. For example, if we feel that it is literally a suspicious activity, so we have to take corrective measures, which means we have to close the account. So fifth step is LEA coordination. So it is not that it is suspicious and we have closed the account, that the story doesn't end there. You have to report to regulators. LEA coordination, you have to coordinate with LEA and you have to pass on the entire information. So in this account I have observed some suspicious activity, so we are giving the entire information to LEA. So how the information goes to LEA, I have already explained in the previous video. It is very simple. First, if any suspicious activity have been identified, we will file a SAR report to FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, and from there it case go to LEA, Law Enforcement Agency, and from there it goes to regulators. So these are the 5 steps. So, and again in each and every step there are lot of information, how we can identify the trigger and how we have to document our findings, how we have to investigate it, how the coordination with LEA happens. There are different a few in-depth knowledge in each and every step. So we'll discuss on each and every step. So the first thing is identify the trigger. For example, a bank has newly started its business. So as per the regulation, they have to perform KYC checks, CDD, EDD, PIP, sanctions, and also they have to have a team to monitor the transaction monitoring. They have to have transaction monitoring team. So soon you establish a business and you simply can't monitor the transactions like manually. It takes a lot of time, though you need a softwares. So how the software should be designed? There are regulatory to identify these trigger points. We need the softwares. So on what basis you have to select a software? The regulators will give some recommendations. First we'll discuss about trigger points. What were the trigger, like there are how many, there are a few types of trigger points where we can which will help us to conduct an investigation on customer activity. The first trigger point is regulatory recommendation. So we need not to do much extra put efforts on it. The regulators only recommend us. Since it is a recommendation, that doesn't mean you may choose to follow or not to follow. You have to follow it. Why? Because a regulatory recommendation, the word itself is regulatory recommendations, which means the regulators are recommending you, if you follow these steps, your bank or you will be safe from money laundering and terrorist financing. As regulators are the one who give license to the banks, they have to follow it. Since the word says recommendation, that doesn't mean you have to choose or not to choose. You have to choose and you have to follow it. So one thing is from regulatory recommendations. Regulatory recommendations they give through updates, journals, and sometimes for example, there are a lot of regulators, like it depends upon country to country, they issue reports time to time. So we have to for example, if you take EU, in EU we have 7 AML directives. Now seventh one is the present it is running 7th AML directive. So that is also one regulatory recommendations. So whatever mentioned in the 7th AML directive, that regulated entity or the bank has to follow it, because the regulators are the one who give license to us. We have to obey the recommendations which they give. So that is one. Through regulatory recommendations given by the bank, we get some insights on how we have to identify the triggering points. The next one is branch negative referral. For example, every individual in the bank or institution responsible for identifying or reporting any money laundering or terrorist financing concerns. For example, an IT employee found something in the ground floor or somewhere in the office spaces, like some people look suspicious, so he can report it. That is one way of identifying the triggering points, through branch negative referral. It can be any employee, and sometimes it can be first line of defense also, people who are working in the first line of defense. So those first line of defense are the employees who face the customer. For example, relationship manager or KYC analyst or remediation department or sales manager or the branch manager. These are the people who directly face the customer. For example, when a customer walks in and he sees the customer and he feels that it is suspicious, and because by seeing the facial expressions or his body language, that gives some triggering points. So those triggering points also, they can refer to the senior management, that I have found that this suspicious behavior on this customer. So those also can be investigated. So that is one way of triggering point, branch negative referral. One is whistleblowing policy or internal hotlines. It depends upon organization to organization. Now every bank or every organization has this whistleblowing policy. For example, when your colleague or when your senior manager or manager found doing something money laundering, or he has some information on this case, but he wantedly bypassed it, but you observed it. So those also, through internal hotlines and whistleblowing policy, you can report to senior management. That is also one way of identifying the triggering points. Fourth way of identifying the triggering point is adverse media or negative media. For example, every bank has multiples of customers. On one customer, there was a negative news on social media or some news platforms. So that gives a triggering point. This person there is a lot of news circulating against this person who is our customer. So we have to investigate this customer and whether to do business with him in the future or not. So that is one way of identifying the trigger. And the fifth way of identifying the trigger point is LEA enquiries by LEA, law enforcement agency. Sometimes law enforcement agency also inquires on certain customers of our bank. So how they inquire it, like there is some certain process for it. It is not simply they walk into our bank account and ask the customer. They have to send certain documents. There are multiple ways where LEA approaches the bank. One is through subpoena order. So subpoena order is nothing but a document which states that we need certain details on this customer. So subpoena order has either the bank may choose to respond or not to respond it. It depends upon, again, situation to situation. If the bank feels that okay, there is no money laundering happening on this customer, they choose not to respond, and if they are not sure, they can respond it. And before responding or not to responding, the subpoena order that is issued by the LEA, the compliance department receives that subpoena order. That compliance department should have to send that subpoena order to the legal counsel. So they will take the decision whether to respond or not to respond it. That is one way of LEA approaches the bank. Another one is search warrant. So when you receive a search warrant, you don't have an option. You have to respond. You have to cooperate with the LEA. So LEA then by bringing the search warrant, the LEA can walk into your bank, see certain files they can take and they can investigate it. So this is also one way of identifying the trigger. For example, LEA bring the search warrant and ask for certain details on the customer. You have to give the file. The file will be seized. Again, the process will be very lengthy process. What happens once the file is seized and there is one third party will be having a mutual agreement between LEA and the bank stating that this information will be used only for investigation purpose, not to other criteria. So these are the ways, and there is one more way how LEA reaches: national security letter. For example, if the conditions are very critical, one of our customer is having very ties with the terrorist organization, that will be breach, that will be threat to national security. So at that time they issue a letter called national security letter. Even in that case also the bank has to fully cooperate with the LEA. So these are the 5 ways how we can identify triggering points. Even our softwares or our tools or our policies, procedures and controls, everything will be designed by keeping all these 5 triggering points. So these are all the 5 triggering points which will help us to investigate customer activity. So this is all about the identifying the triggering points. So the next comes the investigation. And investigation of a customer can be done in 3 steps. One is review, and the other one is identification, and the other one is request for information. So in review of a customer, we review the customer's activity of say for example 1 year or 6 months, depends upon the triggering point. So by reviewing the customer activity, we will get to know about the transaction behavior of the customer, or the pattern, or the both debits and credits, how many debits or how many credits. So we can get the whole information. And for reviewing the customer activity, we can collect some of the additional documents other than transaction activity, the KYC document, source of funds, source of wealth, like from where he is getting the money and from where he is debiting and from where it is getting credited. So based on considering all these documents, we can review the customers and we can get to know about the behavior or the transaction pattern. Once the review is done, if there is any suspicious activity, we can identify it. Once we know the behavior, then we can identify the customer suspicious activity. Once we can identify, we have to collect the supporting documents of the suspicious activity, either through official websites or negative media or any other open source. If you are not able to find that the evidence to that suspicious activity, we can reach out to the client. We can reach out to the client through RFI, request for information. And once we raise request for information, and customer have to respond it. So once we identify suspicious activity, that doesn't mean we have to directly go and report to FIU or LEA. So first we have to give a chance to the customer to explain about that suspicious activity, or how did it happen, or to provide some necessary documents. And if the customer is not responding, we can file SAR report. On SAR report to FIU, and from there it goes to LEA. So this is the way how we will perform investigation of a customer. This is just an overview, because performing investigation of a customer, it includes a lot of patterns, lot of behavior. It depends upon the rules, it depends upon the features. So the third one is document your findings. So what all we have done in the investigation of a customer, the review, like how much data has been taken, like the 1 year data or 2 years data, and the pattern, the behavior, the identification, suspicious activity. So we have to document all these findings. So this includes in the third step. Third step is document our findings. So what all we have done in the investigation, we have to document all our findings. And the fourth step is closure of the account or taking the corrective measures. For example, we have identified suspicious activity and it is a true suspicious activity, then we will close the account. And by closing the account also, well, it is not simply we can close the account. We have to coordinate to LEA and then we have to close the account. Sometimes LEA itself will gives us please close the account, then we have to close it. And before closing the account, we have to consult the legal counsel. So for example, LEA gives that we have identified suspicious activity on this customer, please close this account. That doesn't mean we simply close it. We reach out to legal counsel and take whether the LEA's decision is correct or not, and based on that we can close the account, or we can choose to close the account or not to close the account. So these are all the ways that will be helpful to review customers' activity. So these are all the 5 steps. This is one of the main important topic in transaction monitoring, steps to review customer activity, which is like steps to perform transaction monitoring. So I hope this video will help you to give at least some overview of what is transaction monitoring, what are the steps involved. If you do have any comments, please drop down in the comment section. The video has given you overview of how transaction monitoring works and how investigation of a customer is done, what are the parties involved. See you in the next video. If you have any doubts, please comment in the comment section. I will be very happy to help in the upcoming videos. Thank you. See you in the next video.